Yo, guys, what up? It's Sunday morning. It's our first Sunday morning stream. It's our first full Sunday of football. I'm pumped. College
Hmm.
football got me by for a little bit, but we are here. We've got some updates that we're going to touch on. We've got some games we want to take a closer look at. So just hang out with us for the next hour and a half or so, and hopefully we can, get you in the right direction. If you have any lineup questions, definitely post them, and one of us will answer those. We'll help you get your lineup set, pick your flex guys. Anything we can do to help you, win your matchup this week.
So what do you want to start off with? You want to start off with some of the injury updates real quick?
Yeah, I think maybe we touch on the things that we know so far, and then I think there's going to be some updates that kind of trickle through as the games get closer. But then, yeah, we can touch on some different games, different matchups, maybe some things that might have some fantasy relevant implications today.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot to cover, but um, first thing that I think might be important, or I guess that might affect teams the most, is sounds like OBJ is going to be a game time decision. Um, I don't know. I mean, what do you do with that?
It's tough, man, because that's a 4:30 game, right?
It's a 4:30
So
game on the road too, which is a minor factor, but
yeah, I'm just trying to think of like, you know, if you have a really strong options because OBJ was kind of drafted a little later this year in drafts. So if this is a particular week where maybe you're in a league where you just start two wide receivers, one flex, you might have the luxury of just waiting a week with him if you don't want to chance it because it's a 4:30 game. If this was a 1 o'clock game and everybody would be available to you to sort of last minute make a decision on, you could leave them in. But because a lot of these games are already gonna have been played, that's probably what I would do. But if you're not in that position, then he definitely needs to be in your flex. That way you can fill it with a running back, or even if it's super desperate, like an extra tight end you got on your team, if he's going to be out. But if he's in, obviously, like I would want to play him because this is. I don't want to like try to get into that where we try to predict these high scoring games and low scoring games because I don't think like it's tough to do that. But this would seem like a game where you would expect there to be some scoring, and if Odell Beckham is out there, I would want to be playing him. That's for sure.
yeah, he's a guy that I'm thinking. I was thinking the same thing. I agree with most of that. It's like you probably drafted him as your wide receiver three at best. So also, if you did that, you knew it was a very volatile pick. I mean, you probably have a
Hmm.
backup plan for him if you are one of the few in a tough decision. Totally agree. You're just gonna want to make sure you have something going on, in case he doesn't play. Um, 4:30 is not that bad either. I guess the only thing I'd like to add to that is don't forget, since it's week one, it might be worth just reminding some guys. Um, you can't plug a guy into your lineup once their team's game starts. That's how the default settings work. So, like, anyone that plays the 1 o'clock game will not be available to you, right? Like, obviously, even if the game just started, that's going to be a lot of players not available to you if you're last minute scrambling to replace him. So, um, probably unlikely with week one that you have somebody you really need to feel like you need to add that you haven't already, but just something to keep in mind. The other thing I'm seeing here is Austin Ekeler, who was drafted very early and I think could have a very good year this year. He is playing, but the news is coming out and it's phrased in a way where it seems like he's going to be capped. And I don't know if that means a touch limit. I don't know if that means they just don't want to, overuse him. But I, I'm probably putting him in my lineup because of how early I had to draft him. But I have pretty low expectations, so I might be trying to hedge that with like a higher upside flex, or maybe taking a couple more long shots in my starting lineup than I might have to compensate. I just don't know that he's going to be getting 25, 30 touches this week. I think it's going to be pretty low, and I think that just the way the news came out, I don't like it. I personally don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, Rappaport said that Austin Eckler it will be quote full go for week one, but he did not practice Wednesday, Thursday. The injury, what was it? It was a hamstring. Is that
Hamstring,
what that was
which
his?
is
Yeah, I
also
mean,
scary.
don't love that. That's a tough one.
No, yeah, you're going to want
Um,
to stay away from those.
right. You preferably to stay away from those. I mean, it could be one of those situations where the thing is, we don't even really know who the backup is for this team. That's kind of the unfortunate part too. Like, is it Justin Jackson or is it Kelly? Like, we don't really know. I think the best guess is that it's Justin Jackson. So hopefully you've got him on your team already. If not, and he's available, you need to add him real quick because if that's one of those situations where you don't really have a better replacement, at least that's a 1-to-1. You know what I mean? If Eckler ends up being out, at least you've got something to do, to somebody to put in.
Sure. And not only do those hamstrings linger, but you can re-injure yourself pretty
Yeah.
more easily with those types of injuries too. So like he might
Yeah.
actually be good this week, tweak it, and now he's out for a month.
Yeah, or like the worst case ones are the ones where they go in and they play one series and you're watching the game, you're like they come back out on the field and you're like, where's Austin Eckler? He's fucking out for the game.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
that's the worst.
It seems like it happens more often than it doesn't though, right? That they get like 3 touches and they're fucking out. And you're like, "Oh,
Yeah, yep.
okay."
Goes out there for one carry, see him fucking like limping when he.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, awesome.
dragging his leg off the field.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, at least that's a 1 o'clock. That's a little bit easier of a situation to deal with than Odell Beckham is. You should have someone you can fill into that spot.
well, in the 1 o'clock games too, like this might just be me, but I assume other people are in this boat too. Like at the 1 o'clock games, I wake up a little bit early. I check my updates. I make sure my lineups are good to go. Like all that's happening. But then when you get into 4 or 8 o'clock games, it's like life happens. You might be in the middle of something. You might have to go to the grocery store. You might be doing something with the family, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I forgot to change
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So
It does
yeah,
happen.
1 o'clock. Silver lining, it is a 1 o'clock thing. We can get that fixed. Um, I don't know, man. There's some other stuff to keep an eye on today. It looks like we've got um, it looks like we probably have two options out of the Ravens backfield today. It's going to be Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray. Um, I think there's some other options that trickle into the equation later in the near future, but right now we've got two guys. Sounds like Tyson Williams could be the front runner for that gig. The way it was phrased in one article I was reading said um, it's his job to lose. I think that might have been jumping the gun a little bit, but it sounds like there's a camp out there that feels like he's the dude right now.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, he's talked pretty positively about Tyson Williams. The last thing that they quoted him on was saying that he has, quote, done nothing but impress the coaching staff this summer. The thing is, it's week one, and he's obviously the most familiar with the system, and the team is most familiar with him and what he can do, because every one of these other guys are just guys that they've brought in. So at least for this week, I think you're safe to say that he's going to get enough work that he's worth putting out there and playing if you need somebody. I mean, obviously, if you have to weigh your options, but a lot of people are probably in a position where Tyson Williams you can at least consider for flex, if not your RB2. And I think this particular week anyway, you can. And then from there, we have no idea. We have to see how that goes, because the thing too is, once Latavius Murray's there and he's got a little bit of time under him, from there we don't really know what is Latavius Murray really as a player at this point. If he's still a pretty good player, then you could certainly see him being like the 1A on this team a couple of weeks from now. I just don't think that's going to be the case this particular week. I think you play Tyson Williams.
Yeah, totally agree. Um, we've got Saquon Barkley. It kind of feels like that Eckler territory for me. Saquon Barkley is questionable, but they're saying he's going to play. A very similar situation. Dude's coming off of a couple big injuries, and he's not healthy to start the season. Uh, it's been almost a full year, and some of these guys come back earlier from these injuries than this. So I'm really concerned about Saquon Barkley right now. I do think he plays, but like we're really getting into that you need Booker territory. I mean, I don't think it's even negotiable at this point. That he just needs to be on your roster if you have Barkley. I'm really concerned with Saquon Barkley right now. I know he went like ninth in our 14 team leagues draft, like 3 days before the season, or the day before the Thursday night game? I think we drafted
Yeah.
that team Wednesday.
Yeah, and what's a little weird about this too is there was kind of conflicting reports, because it was maybe yesterday or the day before I had read a report about him being a full go. Like when you hear that, you're like, oh, okay, like we're good to go here. And then it comes out that he's going to be limited, right? I think that's what they said.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's such a weird thing. Will be eased in and used sparingly. That was from Ian Rappaport as well. So I hope you have Devontae Booker if you have Saquon Barkley, which goes to credit to your point, Doug, because you were talking about that a couple of weeks back, or a few weeks back, when you were seeing how much they were using Booker in the preseason games. I tell you what's scary about this is that Saquon got hurt so early in the year last year, and has been just a lot of recovery time, and yet still he's not going to even be used week one very much. Maybe this is the Giants just trying to be safe. Maybe they want to ease him in, not necessarily because of what they've seen from him that's made them feel like they need to. Maybe they just don't want to be week one. Maybe week one they want to put him in there and just let him touch the ball 8 times or something like that. Maybe a couple dump offs. See how he looks, see how he feels. Go into the next week. Oh, you don't have any lingering things going on? Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and get you back to a workhorse. It could be the case. But for the first week, like, what do you do as a Saquon Barkley owner? Are you going to play him anyway because you probably have to? I mean, if he is going to play, it's going to be so tough to sit him, right?
Oh, you pray that he hits a home run this week and you get
Yeah.
everything you can out of him in the trade
Yeah.
market. I don't think there's a winning scenario in this because the way this news is coming out, and it might just be partially because it's the Giants, but it feels more like they're playing Barkley out of desperation than a slow and steady, like, we can afford to limit you kind of a way. And like I said, it could just be the vibe from the Giants because they haven't been very good lately. But
Hmm.
that part concerns me. The ability of Booker, the deliberate acquisition of Booker by the team, like there's two ways I'm kind of seeing this play out this year. They're either going to cap each other, and neither one of them is going to have a ton of value, or like they they put Barkley in there too early, and he gets hurt again. Like, I think those are the two options right now. And it's rough because Barkley's name and talent prevent him from taking that backseat role or being a complementary piece. But really, like, in football terms, like on the field, maybe Barkley is your selective open field kind of guy right now, where Booker can take a few hits and you're not losing the world if he goes down. It's just
Right.
the circumstance and the name won't allow it.
Ah, it'd be such a bummer.
Yeah.
It'd be such a bummer if he goes out and I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. I don't even want to speculate
I
because he could
know.
go out and fucking ball out. Like
I
get 10
know.
touches, but just absolutely ball.
Now I know that it was freakish when AP did it, but AP came back in like 8 months or 9 months from the same injury. So like the fact that
Yeah.
he got hurt in week 2, I think I read the other night last
Yeah.
year. So like it's been a full year, and we're still talking about him being injured. That, I mean, it just
That
freaks me
that's
out.
that's the most concerning part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fire. That's fire. What do they say when there's like a bad punt? Poison was our word. Poison, poison. Like, stay
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
What else we got? We've got, I don't know, some more minor. Well, actually, this one's huge. I think this one's huge. So
Okay.
Michael Gallup goes down 3 to 5 weeks. My
Oh,
team auto drafted him. I was like really bummed out about it, but there's some good news in here, right?
if you're a CD Lamb owner, there is.
I mean, we've
I
been
mean,
talking about what's going to happen with when Gallup is out of the picture because they re-signed Cooper. Gallup is there, but like he's on his way out. I think this is his last contract year, and we've been just like drooling over, like salivating over what CeeDee Lamb will be without Michael Gallup in the picture as a number 1 or a number 2 in a two receiver team, right?
yeah. Yeah, I mean he's going to be so good for fantasy. He's going to be unbelievable. That first week when Gallup was out there, he was getting looks early and he was out there in two wide receiver sets. So early on, you're a CD Lamb owner and you're like, okay, well, I still got a really good receiver on a team that's going to throw the ball a lot. So it's not like you're down about it. But you were kind of probably hoping to see CD Lamb take over that number 2 role definitively. And then that didn't seem to be the case early on. Now Gallup's out of the picture and CD's going to be on the field the entire game. And we both believe he's so much better than Michael Gallup that like he's going to make the most of those opportunities. It's now I feel so strong about CeeDee Lamb, and I know you do too, that I'm probably looking at this like Cooper's still the one, but they're not far off from each other. Like these guys are going to trade weeks, but the thing is, both of them are going to be able to be both of them are going to be able to put up huge fantasy numbers every single week just with the way this team's probably going to play.
Oh
So
yeah.
if you're a CeeDee Lamb owner, this is awesome news for you.
Christmas come early, boys.
For
I mean,
real.
you're getting a third of the season a year early in this situation, which also, let's be honest, is a great opportunity to just develop your own opinion. And if you don't like it, that's even better for you because now you get to see it before you're locked into it for a full season. You still have a whole year's worth of potential breakouts. I don't see a world where that happens, right? But say he doesn't look good, like you have a chance to fix that. You have a chance to not keep him in your league. You have a chance to move him if you're in a dynasty league. Like it's great. It's great.
It is, and Gallup isn't out for the entire season. It's a few weeks, but I just don't think I can't picture a world where he comes back and then he's back to the number two because CeeDee Lamb's he's gonna produce so much in this amount of time. It'll just be undeniable. There will be no way that the Cowboys could then go back to what they were doing, with Gallup as the two. CD needs to fix the drops. He had like what 3 in week 1, and a couple of them were pretty big, and they showed that graphic during the game. You and I didn't even realize it, but he was the tied for 4th with the most drops in receivers in the league last year. So got to clean those up, but the dude could drop 3 a game, and Dak is still going to chuck it to him. So for fantasy production, not such a big deal. Was there any other major news that was affecting today's games?
Well,
We have
those
like some
I
like
didn't.
small ones like Emmanuel Sanders. That's whatever to me. We have to see what's going to happen with those receivers week 1 anyway outside of Diggs. So I don't even really feel like that's major news.
Um, there's a couple other small things that I guess we can just kind of breeze through and then get into like games and other stuff here. There's Carson Wentz is starting, which is
Oh right.
very good for the team, but for fantasy, I feel like that's a Michael Pittman only effect. I will say, remind you guys that Pascal was running a lot of reps out of the slot. T.Y. Hilton is missing some time, right? So if Pascal's getting the slot reps and he's looking good in that role, I mean, that could offer some early value and a sell high opportunity. So I would keep an eye on that. But I think Pittman, one of those late guys that we've been talking about for a couple weeks, I think he could be paying off early if Wentz is already on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I'm a little bit. I'm if I have Pittman, which I do in a league, I'm waiting the first week if I can. I mean, if you can play him, I think you could do a whole lot worse. But the reason I want to wait is because I don't know how limited Carson Wentz is going to be, even though he's playing. I mean, when that injury happened, they were talking about a ridiculous, stupid timeline, but it was 5 to 12 weeks out, that games that he was going to miss.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're looking at like he's starting the very first week. He was in a no contact jersey the entire time at practice. He wasn't really moving around much. So like he's starting, yes, but how much is he going to be limited is what I'm worried about. So it's just one of those things where if you got better options for this particular week, you might as well wait and just see how it happens. And if Pittman balls out, then awesome, you got a guy that you can start moving forward from there.
Yeah.
But I do think you could do worse. Like I said, like if you're in a deeper league and you got Pittman that you're looking at in your flex, I would feel fine doing that at the same time.
I'm I'm happy with I'm happy with it. Wentz isn't he can be mobile, but I think he offers enough with arm talent that if he's out there and I mean some of it
Hmm.
I don't like doing it, but some of it is you relying on the Colts offensive line too, which is in that conversation of like top offensive lines for most people. I think they're always talked about and raved about. I think there's an opportunity he can be productive without while he's dealing with some stuff. So um, hopefully that turns into some production. Hopefully we see somebody else kind of step up. I think there's some opportunities there. Another opportunity today, it's the last note that I have here coming into the stream, is that Jamison Crowder's out with COVID. They weren't able to activate him off the COVID reserve list before the game. So probably the biggest bump for Elijah Moore. I think if you're watching that game, which you probably want to, there's a lot of receivers there. You kind of want to see how this plays out, right? I think Crowder is the only guy on that team that could affect the production of all of the other receivers. I think these other guys have some roles kind of carved out, but I think his versatility changes the way everyone else could fit into the game plan.
I can see that. It definitely would Elijah Moore. because they're likely. I mean, Elijah Moore is primarily a slot player, and that is also what Crowder primarily does. So him being out at least clears this shit up for a week. Where, I mean, that's Elijah Moore. I'm kind of looking at him in a similar light as what we were just saying with Michael Pittman. If you can wait a week to see how this plays out, do it. But not like you could also do a lot worse. I would be willing to put Elijah Moore in the flex just because you know that Crowder's out, so that just like it kind of clears up some opportunity here. It's Corey Davis, and then it's who? Like it's probably Elijah Moore. And there was before this guy got hurt, dude. Like people were in love with this guy. Like they were in love with Elijah Moore, and there was so many positive reports coming out of camp. Once we got to see Zach Wilson play some, and you could see like, oh, okay, like this guy can really throw the ball. Between that and the positive reports that came out with Elijah Moore, and then now Crowder being out this week, and he's gonna have the opportunity on the field. I would play him. I would play him if you need to. And that's something that's going to be one of the rookie wide receivers I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to today, along with a couple others.
Yeah, for sure. What's interesting about it too is that you would ideally want to run Crowder in the slot. You would ideally want to run Moore in the slot. You said both of those things. But
Mm-hmm.
if Moore looks good this week, then that
Mm-hmm.
probably means you want to have both of them on the field too. So Crowder
Mm-hmm.
maybe bumps outside. We saw it with Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald when Kirk came into the picture, and it was like, well, okay, well, we have two slot guys, but if they're going to be good for us, we need to keep them on the field. So
Get him on the field, yeah.
yeah,
Or maybe they do that with Elijah Moore. Some who knows? And maybe they mix it up. That's kind of the biggest issue here is we just won't know once Crowder's there. But if Elijah Moore goes out and produces, like it's again they can't just they're not just going to be like, cool man, appreciate that, but yeah, go ahead and sit down now, our high draft pick. Like let's get Crowder back out there instead. I don't think that's going to happen. You know?
no, and this is a 1 week thing, so like Crowder will be back next week. So in my mind, this is maybe one of a rare situation where there's a certain level of production that Elijah Moore could have that might keep him in the slot. So say, and some of it I think comes in the team performance comes into play. So like if the Jets happen to win and Elijah Moore shows out, and I'm talking like 20 fantasy points, right? Whatever that might be,
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of yards, or a good amount of yards and a touchdown, however that equates, right? I think if the Jets win and Elijah Moore performs well enough, they won't want to change something that's working because this is a team that needs to win. They don't need to. They are young, but they want to win. It's a new coach. Sally's very competitive.
Yeah.
I think if the Jets win and there's a high level of production from Moore, Crowder's more likely to be bumped outside. So that's kind of interesting to me too. Definitely more interested in Moore if he does stay inside because we have seen slot guys bump outside that haven't really worked out. So
Yeah, it doesn't always work out.
no. Um, I
You
DeAndre
got
Swift's
something
not a
else?
murderer yet.
Oh,
We don't know that yet. It sounds like a
never know.
ridiculous rumor, but yeah, I mean we've been down this road before. Hopefully, if it is if we get this cleared up, right? Hopefully we get more information and we know we know what's going on. It's a wild rumor for now, but we'll see how
As
this
far as
plays
we know
out.
for right now, it's not a problem.
Yeah,
But we don't really know.
he's gonna play this week, so
He's playing this week. We're good this week.
we'll see. We'll see. That usually
Murderer or
means
not, he's
good.
out there.
It usually means good things for football performance. All right. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to maybe selfishly because I have him in two leagues, but we were just talking about a rookie wide receiver, and I kind of want to jump over to another one. We have Jalen Waddle with Miami. That felt like I feel like early on in the season that felt like a weird situation. One, because people don't know how they really feel about Tua, but also there's just like this mixed bag of other receivers there. Like you still have Devontae Parker, but then you got Will Fuller that they brought over. But we're talking week one for this week. Parker is back. Parker's been out and been hurt for most of training camp. Um, Will Fuller's obviously not playing in the first game because he's suspended. Preston Williams is hurt. He's not expected to play in week one. So it's going to be Devontae Parker, Albert Wilson, and Jalen Waddle. And Waddle has been the only healthy receiver, which is funny because he had a serious injury coming out of college. But he's been the only healthy receiver throughout the entire training camp. He's had a lot of work and a lot of focus put on him because of that. I really liked what I saw out of him in preseason. And you have to remember, like back in the Bama days, there's all this love for Devontae Smith, which I totally get too, because he was an awesome player. But before Waddle got hurt, Waddle was the guy for Alabama. He's incredibly fast. He's a slot player primarily, and he's he's a really good route runner in a different way. He's really good at just sort of hiding things. He's not so much like this quick feet thing, even though he's really fast. He's really crafty with his route running. I'm paying a lot of attention to him this week because I do think there's potential. I kind of picture, like, I'm not comparing him to OBJ, not prime OBJ, definitely not doing that. But OBJ would make a living off of those like short slant routes coming across the field, get like a 10-yarder, and then just house it.
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle, like, don't be surprised if you see that happen today. That could very much happen. So that's just another receiver that I'm paying a lot of attention to. He has the opportunity right in front of him, just like Elijah Moore does today.
Well, random limited credibility update too to just add to that. I read a little blurb last night. I think that the information is different than the message. I think the information provides less value than the message that was trying to be conveyed. But apparently Tua was quoted as saying that Jalen Waddle was skipping parties to put in extra time in practice with the quarterbacks.
Oh yeah.
So that was the information is Jalen Waddle doesn't like to party. The message is that he's a hard worker and he wants to get better whenever he can. So I think that's huge, especially for a rookie, especially in today's league. So you put a guy that's working hard on a team. I mean, like Brian Flores, I feel like he's a pretty hard-nosed, like grinded out kind of guy. He's gonna respect that. The guy's been healthy, like you said, so I think it's all painting a very positive picture for him. Just up arrows for him.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. A big time rookie for me to pay attention to this week for sure.
For sure.
There's Devontae Smith's going to be another one. Like there's obvious names, but I feel like I wanted to just touch on the ones that maybe aren't so obvious. Elijah Moore and him are two guys we should be looking at.
Sure. Another thing, we kind of touched on the Cowboys. There is one other thing I had here was Lyle Collins. Lyle Collins is suspended. I didn't see why, but I saw that he's supposed to be suspended for 5 weeks.
He skipped his drug test. It wasn't even that he failed it. He just didn't show up for it.
Ooh, bad luck.
Bad luck.
Bad luck, especially for a tackle. Like you got Laramie Tunsil out here had a gas mask on. That they aired that picture during the draft, and I mean he's not skipping drug tests.
I mean, yeah. I mean, why do you skip? You know what I mean? It seems pretty weird. That's why he got hit with 5 games.
Okay, so that's just more bad news for Zeke owners. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's probably bad news for everybody a little bit. He's a pretty good player, but the more bad news you get, for the more small things that come out painting the same picture for one player, the more you have to like actually adjust how you feel about that person. And I think with Zeke's performance and missing a tackle for 5 weeks, I think that hurts quite a bit.
Yeah, it's just something where it's a situation you already weren't feeling super great about it after seeing everything that we saw week 1. And then, like you said, it seems like there's just problem after problem being stacked here. So it's just feeling with every bad piece of information that comes out, it just feels like it's a little bit worse and a little bit worse. Nothing you can do about it. Nothing you can do about it as a Zeke owner. You kind of just got to ride it out. But yeah, it's unfortunate.
Really is. It really is. What else? I mean, so we're looking at Elijah Moore. You said you wanted to look at that. I think a big game for fantasy this week is going to be that 4:30 Chiefs-Browns game. I think that there is a great opportunity to find a receiver that could make a difference for you this year. Even if OBJ doesn't play, that gives more opportunities for DPJ and Higgins, who have been potential sleepers this year. Probably more so DPJ for the upside. I think Jarvis Landry could be a total sleeper this year. The dude's been good for a long time. He had a hip injury last year. So there's some opportunity for him to show out. If he looks good and healthy, that's somebody you might be wanting to try to get cheap while you can, especially for consistency. That could, provide you with some week in, week out production if maybe you have a more volatile starting lineup. And then on the other side,
one of those players that people don't get like super excited about, but could end up being fantasy relevant all year.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a bunch of home runs in your lineup, then like you should probably be trying to get a 10-point per game guy, 12-point per game guy.
Agreed.
And then you had some You had some you had some opinions for the other side, the Chiefs side. What do you're looking at some of their
Oh,
receivers.
yeah. I mean, I think people should start Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey. You're welcome. No, outside of those guys, like obviously
Patrick
the big
Mahomes, is he
question,
good?
Patrick Mahomes is okay. He's, I mean, if you have some better options out there, I understand. But otherwise, yeah, go ahead and you can play him. No, this other wide receiver position, like I think that's probably going to be a position that everyone out in the fantasy world is paying attention to this week because, of course, you want to be able to tie yourself to that offense. That's why everybody is so excited about. That's why they were so excited about Clyde last year. And that's why Michael Hardman. That's why we still talk about him, even though he hasn't done shit this entire time he's been with the Chiefs, is because of that offense. So we're paying attention to. First, I'm paying attention to who's going out there and starting for them. Not that that's going to really tell you much even after this first week, but at least that kind of can get you and put you in the mindset of where the coaches are looking at it to start that game. Is Hardman going to be out there first, or is it going to be Pringle? Is it going to be Robinson? And then usage during that game, and then but also like where are the valued targets going to go from Mahomes? So trying to pay attention to all that because for all we know, like maybe McCall Hardman starts the game, but they might get into the red zone and he targets Robinson. Like I don't know how that's going to look. I feel like if I had to predict, I feel like what's going to happen is all three of those wide receivers are. It's just going to be a mixed bag, and we're not going to get anything consistent. But if it's Mecole Hardman or if it's Robinson, if one of these guys goes out there and does end up week one getting 8, 9 targets and they're on the field a lot and then they also don't make any stupid boneheaded plays like both those guys have been pretty good at doing over the course of their careers and they actually produce, then that's gonna be a name that everybody's gonna be talking about next week because of the Chiefs offense. So that's another huge one to pay attention to because if one of those guys ends up over that role, that spot that locks that wide receiver two down, then they're going to be a play you're going to at least consider in your flex, if not a wide receiver two, most weeks. I mean, I just don't know how you wouldn't if that was their lockdown role.
Yeah,
You
for
agree?
sure.
Do you agree with that, or do you think it's going to end up just always being? I mean, I like I said, I kind of lean towards. I don't think we're going to get there. I think all these guys are always going to be. They're going to have their weeks, and it's going to be inconsistent. You're not going to be able to predict it. But
I mean, unfortunately, like if I'm putting money or reputation on the line, I think Sammy Watkins has missed enough time that we have a pretty good idea of how this is gonna go or not go. Um,
you're right
I
with what
think
we've already
we're
seen.
yeah, I think it's more like when LaShawn McCoy went to the Chiefs or Le'Veon Bell went to the Chiefs. I think it's more like we're hoping that it's a thing than maybe that
Yeah.
it ends up being a thing.
Hmm.
Anytime, like you said, anytime you mention the Chiefs offense, it's like, oh, okay, well, there's a great opportunity here. Something crazy is going to happen, and it doesn't always. Um, I think as of right now, these guys have each had a couple years. They've had a decent amount of opportunity. I think Mecole Hardman, we know he has a speed. He is probably going to give you bigger weeks. He's already had a few pretty big weeks sprinkled out, across the last couple years. I think from what I've seen from Robinson, I think he has the potential to be a more consistent receiver. It looks like he's better at getting open on some of the finer routes, but he's also dropped more balls than anyone I've seen on that team too. So it's like how many times can you go to that same well, if it's
Hmm.
not working? So I think some of it depends on your roster comp. I think some of it depends on being realistic over optimistic. But if you need consistency, maybe you grab Robinson. If you need home runs, maybe you grab Hardman because it could keep playing out that way. Like it could just be that this season. It could be 6 to 8 points from Robinson, which isn't useless for fantasy purposes. You can roster this guy and play him if you need to, but also maybe there's some upside there. If one of these guys does break through, and then obviously Hardman for the home run. Cam, you're a receiver
Right.
guy. I'm wondering if you're picking one, or do you have opinions on either? Like, where are you at with this?
Sorry, dude, I just jumped up, but I heard where you at with this.
So we're talking about Mecole Hardman versus Robinson, Demarcus Robinson for the Chiefs.
Oof, man.
Not something you're
How's that?
looking at to try to start this week, but just what you're paying
Who I,
attention to, who you're hoping it could be, and who excites you more between those guys.
I mean, if I had to pick, I would go Hardman. I think he's produced more. I think he's also like shown that he can drop the ball and everything. But overall, they still put him in there more, and I think they still want him to be that guy. So
I
if
think they
I,
want him to be too. That's kind of the reason why I've leaned towards him is because of that same reason. I think they
yeah,
want
I
him to
think
be
they,
that guy.
yeah,
That
I don't
matters.
think, yeah, I mean,
Oh, I know.
if you're talking about value, I mean that's exactly what I would look for. He's gonna be out there more too. I think he's gonna be a lot better than what people think. It's just because he's bummed out so far, so many times.
I know.
But yeah, he is. Sammy Watkins is gone, so
I know
someone's
Hardman's
got to
taking
fill
it
it.
personal. He's
Oh
taking it
yeah.
personal that people have been talking about how he's because he hears the noise. People are talking about how he's
Mhm.
just a bust basically, and he's he's been on Twitter talking about like so there was some article or something along those lines. I can't remember about the Chiefs need a wide receiver too, and he put something about that. He was like, "Oh, okay, gotcha," stuff like that.
Yeah. No, it's true though.
It
It's
is.
So we'll
true.
see.
There's a bump for Robinson with the red zone. It's something that I probably pay more attention to than most, but I do know that teams like to have a bigger body when you get closer, and they don't seem to have the guy that they think can punch it in from the running back position. So, um, not that I'm like in love with Robinson or that I'm trying to like change anyone's mind. I do think that Hardman's the more electric player. I think Andy Reid loves electric players. I think that Mahomes has the arm to feed electric players. Um, it's just a different role for each, and they
Can
could both fill
absolutely
those.
imagine you can absolutely imagine a world where Robinson has 2 catches for 43 yards and one of them's a touchdown.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you absolutely can picture that.
Like the Chiefs are, I just think the Chiefs are going to be throwing a lot more than most teams in the red zone, and that's gonna make things
Right.
a little weird there too.
I agree there. I agree. There's a couple more things that I definitely want to mention. I want to save the Ravens for the end, but what are you gonna do about Jamar Chase this week 1?
You probably
Because that's a
drafted him
weird
early
spot.
enough to where you're playing him. Um,
Yeah.
I think the people that if you drafted Jamar Chase, you were the highest on him in your league, or I mean, also draft order, right? So within 2 or 3 guys either way, there's a group of 5 or 6 owners that you were higher on Jamar Chase than anyone else, right? Um, with that being said, I think the talent's there. He is rusty, but his response to the drops was making an excuse for it. I was reading that he was saying the football's different, the white paint on the football is different, and it was throwing him off on being able to track the ball coming in. There were like some really weird, like kind of from the outside you look at it and kind of feel like, how did you think this would make anyone feel better about the situation, kind of thing. But anyway, I think if you had the ability to get Chase, you went early enough to where you have to probably ride it out. Um,
Yeah.
we've talked
Cross your
about
fucking
Deontay
fingers.
Johnson. We've talked about. Today's theme might be drops, but we talked about CeeDee Lamb dropping some balls. I think you ignore it. I think you ignore it and hope for the best. The talent's still there.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I hear you. You're like you said, you drafted him high enough that you probably are playing him week 1 and you're just hoping. There's a couple surprising things that happened. I don't have any update outside of this, but Zach Moss is a healthy scratch today,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. Especially, I mean, if you're a Devin Singletary owner and you have some of these guys that are like that you're borderline with putting in your flex, I think he's flex worthy. Right? It may not be great, but the biggest problem with Singletary last year was that Zach Moss was there, and there wasn't a lot of production to go around for the running backs on that team because they threw so much. And then you split that in half, and there was just nothing. But Singletary will be the guy this week, so he's going to be on the field more and could sneak into an end zone on one of these. So that's kind of interesting. The other one
Yeah.
that's a big surprise, though, did you just see this? Trey Sermon also inactive today.
Yes. So Trey
What
Sermon is
in the
somebody
world?
you probably didn't take thinking he was going to be a big factor week 1. I mean, maybe you did,
No.
but in my
Mm-mm.
opinion, you're taking him because you think he's going to force more workload throughout the season and or Raheem Mostert gets hurt, right? So that's how I valued him, and I'm not panicking if he misses a week or if there's an issue early, but I mean, it is an indicator. I mean, it's a little bump for Mostert owners. They're probably pumped about that.
Yeah, agreed, and I agree with you too. Like you definitely weren't taking Sermon thinking you were getting a starter right off, from the beginning of the season. But I did think he would share carries, because the Niners have always done that over the years with with like what's his name, Coleman, and name all those other fucking guys they've had throughout the last few years, Breida.
Yeah.
But they've never really committed full time to one guy ever. So that's a little surprising to me that he is inactive today.
Oh, for sure. There is a world if you go zero running back strategy in the draft that maybe you are putting Sermon in your lineup because of that, right? Because they do share with the workload, because they have great blocking. Maybe he punches a ball in, I mean, I can see a world where you were leaning on him a little bit this week, but overall, I'm not like dumping him or anything. I think that is probably obvious, but like we'll just hit the pause button. We'll see what happens. Trey Sermon still has a lot of value going forward. Maybe there's a world if you're super desperate where you're looking at one of these other guys, Jeff Wilson, to plug in for that vulture, right? Like Mostert has the ability between the 20s in the middle of the field, but like maybe you're plugging another guy in for that touchdown or two.
Yeah, I mean you've got like Jermichael Hasty and like Elijah Mitchell over there. Good luck. I don't know who to play. Don't play those guys. but that's just why it's so interesting to me, because Sermon being a healthy scratch would imply, unless something comes out that we don't know right now, that would sort of imply that for now anyway, they're kind of viewing him as like he's not ahead of those guys.
It's true. Yeah, healthy scratch is definitely an indicator of where the team feels they might, or how they might feel about a certain player.
Man, I hope he's inactive for a couple weeks, and I'm gonna go buy him low on somebody.
I mean, could totally happen. The thing that I don't understand about it is their opponent. So they're playing my Lions, and healthy scratches against teams that are very good at one thing or another mean a lot. Healthy scratches against teams that aren't very good in general mean more about how the coaching staff feels about the player and less about the weekly matchup, I guess is what I'm getting at. Like if you part of our discussion about Zeke Elliott was that Zeke Elliott looks like he might be done, but I was saying also the Bucs have an incredibly good run defense, so maybe it was a week to week game plan and that they were avoiding trying to run into the teeth of that defense. That's not happening with the Lions. So little bit of something to pay attention to, but yeah, overall probably just a buy low opportunity for you, like Josh said.
Right. Looking through the rest of these matchups, I'm trying to see if there's anything worth mentioning, because a lot of these are obvious for week one. And the thing is too, for week one is we're still in no better position than we were before, because we just have to see these games play out this first week. Then we can really develop some of our opinions and overreact on things.
Oh, for sure. Talking about the Niners-Lions, there's something that I think is worth monitoring this week. I've been a little bigger on Jamal Williams than I think a lot of people. I've been saying that we didn't see very many starters from the Lions, and that if there was one thing that I think they'd be good at on offense this year, it was going to be running the ball. Taylor Decker, who is somebody that people don't really talk much about, but he's been a steady Eddie, pretty good left tackle for us for a few years. He's out, and it sounds like he can be out for a few weeks. He broke his finger, I think it was, and he might have to have surgery on it, so they're waiting and seeing how that's going to play out. They've been talking about possibly moving Sewell to the left side. He hasn't been incredibly comfortable on the right side, but he's been kind of figuring it out. He's also a very young player, and there's a chance that they move him over to the left side to go against Nick Bosa for his first NFL game after he's been spending a month or two learning right tackle. So this offensive line situation that I've been very high on up until this point is starting to look really weird. I think that the one injury that we didn't want to have on that line was Taylor Decker. Frank Ragnow is probably the best player on that team, but you can kind of mix and match and figure that out. But going against this Niners defense, I'm a little worried. That being said, there has been negative update after negative update about DeAndre Swift. There's been an update about his conditioning. There's been an update about this personal life matter. this rumor, there's been an update about his durability. Like he had a little bit of a tweak. So it's another one of those like when all arrows are pointing the same way, you have to think about that. So I want to see how these running backs are used. I want to see if DeAndre Swift is clearly the number one. If Jamal Williams is getting some run and Taylor Decker's finger's not broke, Jamal Williams is somebody you might want to be looking at for like maybe a longer term than we've been thinking. It's going to be hard to pick out without Decker. I get that, but definitely want to see how the team responds to that. I want to see how Sewell plays out there. They could move Vitae from right guard out to right tackle, which I think is part of the reason they might want to move Sewell to the left because Vitae was a right tackle 2 years ago. So they could make it work. But overall, down on the down on Lions running backs a little more because of the injury to Decker, but also trying to pick out if you can pick out what the workload's going to be like, what the share is going to look like.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with everything you said there. I think we could be surprised at how much Jamal Williams is involved, and if he's and then maybe he's even productive. It's a really tough matchup for them today, on top of the offensive line issues they're having. So let's see how that goes.
If they are running the ball this week, it's kind of the only real solid takeaway is if they can find a way to run the ball this week, they're going to do it every week. Like I don't think it's going to happen, but if you see that, like we feel really good about that going forward.
Sure. Just I don't know how much we can really comment on them because we kind of just have to see these things play out. But a couple other things that I am interested in, the Broncos. Kind of curious to see how Jerry Jeudy looks and how Courtland Sutton looks, because I think a lot about both those players. I do still think there's an obvious path where Jerry Jeudy can really have a big leap from year 1 to year 2. And you and I both have always been big fans of what Courtland Sutton has done, and that season he had a couple of years ago should not be forgotten, because I don't think that was just a fluke. I think he is actually that guy. It's Teddy Bridgewater, so it's kind of a weird situation. We'll see how aggressive he is, but that's going to be fun to pay attention to. And also their running back situation, Melvin Gordon and the rookie Javonte Williams. How's that split going to work?
Fantasy factor.
Huge fantasy. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on there with the Broncos, that we got to pay attention to.
Yes.
And the thing too is the Giants defense was pretty fucking rock solid last year, so that might not be a great week 1 start for them. I don't know. We'll have to see. How they look.
Well, that's a good point because those corners have been pretty good, but Bridgewater has proven that he can feed receivers too. Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, and at times Curtis Samuel down the stretch were all fantasy relevant receivers with Bridgewater at quarterback.
They were. Yeah, that game's going to be a fun one to pay attention to for fantasy reasons, running backs and receivers both. This one's less exciting, but the Texans, we have no idea what that running back situation is going to look like, and that's mainly the reason why everybody kind of stayed away, and the people that did get drafted got drafted incredibly late. But what happens if, like, DJ does end up coming out and being the guy, and all this other stuff was just smoke, and it didn't matter? Then he's going to be relevant again. Or if Mark Ingram gets 15 carries a game and looks pretty decent and gets all the goal line work. For what it's the Texans, so you're probably not going to be too excited. Don't expect them to be a very good team this year, but that will mean something that will have some sort of value in fantasy too, and he's probably not owned anywhere. So, or is it Philip Lindsay? Like, I don't know. And I'm not that excited about it, but I am going to pay attention to that too, see what happens there.
For sure. I think Ingram seems like he has the leg up on first and second down. He's also, when I'm looking at crowded situations, I'm looking for a specialist. And I think that Mark Ingram is least likely to get targets, which means he, in my opinion, if you reverse engineer that, he's probably more likely to get the carries. So I could definitely see that. I totally agree with like the goal line situation. I think he's the guy you would want out there in that situation. For me, DJ was productive on a lower workload last year, but him and Philip Lindsay aligned so closely in their skill set and what they bring to the table that if they're both in the picture, like, it's got to be like a coach's like preference, right? Like I think that ability wise, they're both hurting each other really bad for fantasy.
Yeah, and the most likely outcome here is we don't care about these guys for like the entire season unless one or two get hurt. But who knows? There's going to be some shit that's going to happen today that's really going to surprise us.
For sure.
Maybe that's going to be something.
And Brandon Cooks is a great receiver.
I know. I've always liked him.
That team's going to be like, that team's going to have to score some points too, let's be honest.
I know. Yeah, I mean, Tyrod Taylor, he'll probably throw the ball 18 times a game, but maybe Cooks gets 9 of them. I don't know. And if he does, like, he's definitely going to be relevant, man. The dude can still get open. People don't want to show him love, but that dude still gets open.
I mean, if I'm finding a diamond in the rough in that offense, out of everything I don't like, somebody that
Yeah.
might not be talked about at all, Tyrod Taylor makes tight ends productive. I don't even know who their top guy is. I know that Akins was a guy I was keeping my eye on last year.
Yeah.
If he's, I don't even know that he's still there. We can look this up, but Jordan Akins is physically capable.
He's still their tight end one.
Okay, so like maybe Jordan Akins is somebody that you're looking at like, okay, Tyrod Taylor feeds tight ends. This guy has some ability. Like, I don't want to invest in the Texans. I don't think any of us do. But like
I hear you though.
somebody
who was that
nobody's
Bills tight
talking
end that
about.
he made? Can you remember that Bills tight end?
Charles Clay.
Charles Clay. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
He was relevant.
He went to Miami and
And
he
that
did
would-
okay, but like he was good for Buffalo.
He was. I do remember those days. I think damn. I don't know if we plan to, but I think we've kind of touched on something about pretty much almost all of these games. There's a couple we skip, but really nothing that's too exciting to talk about there. You've got like Marquez Callaway, the wide receiver one for the Saints. We'll see how that plays out. He's got a tough corner that he's going to be going against today. The Bears, I have personal interest in that being a Bears fan, so I'm going to see, does Andy Dalton look bad or does he look terrible? Which was really only one of those two options. And then how soon does Justin Fields take over? He's also going against the Rams, so good luck with that defense. But I'm curious to see how Mooney looks. I think we already know what we're going to get with Allen Robinson. Some people are probably really interested to see how that running back situation works out. I mean, I think, maybe David Montgomery just ends up getting 20 carries and a few catches, and there's nothing to talk about here. But we've talked about this before, about that running back room. That might be something that surprises us this week, too.
Yeah, Damian Williams could be out there getting some touches. If we do see that early, if he's getting 8 to 10 touches week one, like we're definitely putting another little bump on that situation. There's some games here that are interesting to me for fantasy purposes, that might not be as interesting otherwise. Like, so we were talking about the Texans. They're playing the Jags. So I think that the Jags playing on the road is a factor, but playing against Houston could give us an indication on what the Jags might want to do on offense. There's 3 receivers there that are all interesting for different reasons. You have James Robinson out there, who is probably going to be the dude running the ball, and then Trevor Lawrence. I think that's a great opportunity to kind of see how the Jags want to function on offense. That might not always be an option when they start playing some better teams, but definitely an opportunity to see what roles they want these receivers to have, and or how often they intend to use some of these guys. I think we've talked about.
DJ Chark's playing today, right? He's out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big one because I have no idea what that's going to look like. I think they got lucky week 1 to play the Texans.
For sure. And I think we expect Shenault to get more volume. I think what we're looking for is Shenault going to get that volume? Does Shark or Jones look like they're getting fed a little more for the second looks,
Right.
or what kind of upside are these looks going to have? Like, is Shark going to be this guy they're trying to get in open space or one-on-ones? Is Jones their security blanket? That's kind of how I picture it going. Or does it go totally different? And then,
Right.
Cam, you can take over on this one if you want to, but we've got Eagles-Falcons. And I think there's some question marks there for the team, like how involved is Kyle Pitts going to be early on? Is he actually a tight end? What does the Eagles offense look like? Is Jalen Hurts going to be running the ball? They've got some pretty good receivers over there. Does Devontae Smith look good? Is Miles Sanders still electric? Like, what are we looking at for that game?
That's a tough one. That is a very tough one. I think Pitts has got to be involved if the Falcons want to do anything in this game or anything all year. You can't rely on Ridley, and you got Mike Davis in the backfield. He is a very set running back too. Like, he's never going to excel to that in running back one spot. I don't see it happening. You got Russell Gage at wide receiver 2. Like, you don't have the options you had the last few years. And they also haven't produced in the last few years. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Hurts gets his first win today.
When you say
Yeah.
that Pitts has to be involved, you're saying as a receiver.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he is a rookie, and everyone dogs rookie tight ends. I get it.
I agree that I think he has to be involved. I think they're gonna try to use him more as a receiver than like an in the box blocking kind of a guy. If he
Oh yeah.
shows the ability to block, which I'm not expecting because there is a slow learning curve there. Um, Mike Mike Davis has some upside there. I mean, he had a pretty good year last year with the Panthers, but no, I agree. I agree with most of that. Um, there is a camp. I think Josh, you're part of that thinks Russell Gage could be a factor this year.
I just think that, yeah, I mean, I think he will end up being relevant, and it's not exciting. I understand why it's not exciting, but if you go back to last year and even some games the year before that, like Russell Gage was having very relevant weeks for fantasy. Now I think he's the clear number wide receiver 2 on that team. You could argue that the tight end with Kyle Pitts is technically going to be a wide receiver 2 for that team in terms of production, and that might be true. But I think Russell Gage could have or should have been a guy that people probably put on the end of their benches, especially deeper leagues, just to see how that plays out. Because it could be one of those things where after this week from here on out, people start talking about him. But I do agree with what Cameron said that I think they're probably going to have to get Kyle Pitts involved if they want to have a chance to win most of their games. And then just how quickly does he acclimate to the league is really just the only question that kind of remains to be seen. But it's not going to surprise me if he goes out and kind of struggles in the beginning. It's not going to surprise me to see him put up 100 yards on a touchdown and everybody loses their shit over it too. Like all things are in play here.
Well, these other receivers are going to play a pretty big role, I think, in the opportunities that Pitts has. Like, if you are showing that Russell Gage is a threat, which I agree, I think he is probably the wide receiver 2 there. But also, I remember moments where I'll try to say it. Oladeus
His name.
Zacchaeus
Yeah. Yeah.
was performing too. He's not a guy that I
Uh-huh.
felt like was out there making mistakes. And if he is also, an adequate wide receiver 3 that has a game here and there, um, it could provide a lot more opportunity for Pitts to hit that middle of the field, finding pockets kind of a role. I guess I'm kind of intrigued on if they're going to be trying to use him as like the big deep threat, primarily, or what the balance is between, finding the softer pockets in the zones and, just trying to find and make him open somewhere. I kind of want to see how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's been a day where, Matt Ryan had a great tight end and it worked great for the Falcons and also for fantasy production. I don't know if it's right or not. We'll see, but I'm kind of picturing them putting Pitts in the slot quite a bit and using his big body in the slot on shorter routes and stuff like that, and then maybe they end up then trying to catch the defense off guard by taking him deep on one or two.
That's probably best
It's
for the offense as a whole, right? Because then you can run Hurst as the tight end and have a little more blocking on the field too.
right. Yeah, because you still have Hurst out there who you can play. So I don't know. Because I mean, they talk about Pitts like receiving ability. He kind of looks like a receiver though. He kind of looks like he's built like a big receiver more than I don't look at him and picture tight end.
It's true.
So I don't know. If he's getting used in the slot a lot, dude, I would be very excited if I was a Pitts owner. If I had Kyle Pitts in fantasy.
Agreed. And then you on the other side, Miles Sanders was somebody that went kind of late that might have a little more upside than his ADP, but we just don't really know what we'll get for sure.
Right.
And then we've got the Rager, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz going to still be involved? I think there's some interesting things that could play out this week for the Eagles too. Um, Rager's good. Rager's good, but Devontae Smith is pretty good too. Like, who is going to be the guy? What is that offense going to look like?
Yeah, so many unknowns there. As a Dallas Goddard fan, a fan of his play, it just bums me out thinking about this team. Zach Ertz over there just killing everybody's value. I think he is going to play. I think he's going to be on the field. He's going to play, and I won't be surprised if he even goes like 4 for 50 or something like that. Just making everybody irrelevant over there.
I mean,
But
he was in the trade market for a little bit, but it seemed like the Eagles wanted quite a bit in return, so he ended up just staying put.
he did. And did you see what he said about like, I just want to put that all behind me. There's been apologies. Like, I just want to retire as an Eagle. So that dude's there for the long haul. Cool.
He's there till they run him out.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, That's interesting. It's good for fantasy. I think we're gonna see some things happen.
I'm so excited, bro. We're an
Another
hour
another one
away.
that another one that kind of stands out to me, um, more for fantasy, I guess, than I don't know, maybe NFL viewership. Vikings at Bengals. The Vikings have tried
Mixon, Joe, Mixon.
the Vikings have tried pretty hard to shore up their defensive backfield. I mean, they cleaned house last offseason, and I think these guys have had a little bit of time to develop and gel. There is some chemistry necessary to, perform at a high level in a defensive backfield, but the Bengals have some pretty good receivers. So we got T. Higgins, we got Jamar Chase, we got Joe Mixon, we have Joe Burrow. The Bengals seemingly like to air it out when Burrow is healthy. I mean, I don't know. How do you guys see this game going? What's the fantasy impact?
I mean, I'll just say that I fully expect to see Burrow still throw the ball quite a bit. But maybe if they don't, I could see also a reason why I wouldn't necessarily think that that would mean that's how it's going to be for the entire season. But maybe this is one of those situations where he's a little rusty too, because there was some mixed reports out of camp about his health and him getting back into a rhythm. And the Vikings could be an improved defense. Maybe I really have no idea what to expect from them. Maybe they suck again. Maybe they're better, and then maybe we look at the Vikings down the road and think that that's not as easy of a matchup as we thought it was going to be in the beginning of the season. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't really know what people's temperature is on the Vikings defense. I just know I'm uncertain with it.
Sure.
But don't be surprised if T. Higgins goes out there and continues to be their best wide receiver on the field. Don't be surprised if that dude scores a touchdown. He's built for that. And hey, look, I'm a Joe Mixon. I got Joe Mixon. I'm a fan of Joe Mixon. I think he's a very talented running back. And it hasn't shown up in the numbers. Don't be surprised if it goes out there and gets 20 carries, 3 catches, and has about 43 yards. That is also in play. Like, that offensive line is sketchy. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, somebody that gets no love for the Bengals, that is another reason to gauge the climate with the Jamar Chase thing. I mean, like, what happens on the field matters. Jamar Chase is very talented. He's probably got a longer leash than most people, because of the draft capital, because of his reputation, because he didn't play football for a year. He could just be shaking some rust off. But
Hmm.
if the Jamar Chase issues continue, Tyler Boyd has been slept on every year, and he's not bad.
Definitely. No, definitely. He could end up being the most consistent one of these three.
He
For
really
real,
could.
like all we know. Yeah, and he's just the guy that nobody gets excited about because, Higgins is the big wide receiver who had a really good rookie season last year. So people, excited about him, rightfully so. And then, yeah, the obvious reasons for Jamar Chase, too. I tell you what I'm personally going to be really bummed about in our keep because we play in keeper leagues. Jamar Chase was obviously there for the taking at what might be a reasonable value when we look back on this at the end of the year. If that dude goes out here week one and just shakes everybody out of their cleats and he's just wide open and he's snagging everything, like we're all gonna roll our heads like, are you kidding me? You
Yeah.
know?
Well, he went. What did they drafted fifth overall this year and took Jamar
Yeah.
Chase? Like, that's huge. They think a lot of
Yeah.
that kid.
Yeah. And when they needed offensive linemen and he had like kid that went to the Lions, they passed on him, you
Yeah.
know? So obviously they have very high expectations for him. Like they need and expect him to come in here in the very first week and be a guy. So, I mean, everybody knows, everyone's familiar with the reports with him so far this year. He's had about 15 different excuses for why he can't catch a football,
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
not a good look. I've never ever heard a receiver talk about how an NFL football is different than college and that's why I can't catch it. Like that was such a crazy one to me where I'm like, what's going on with this guy?
Dude,
You
didn't
know?
he say you couldn't see the ball?
I know something about the stripes or something
Yeah,
about the
it's
ball.
because
Like,
there's no stripes on the NFL balls and there's stripes on the college.
Well,
So he
and then
said that he couldn't see the NFL ball.
yeah, and he was like counting the laces. He said there's like 6 laces on the NFL ball. Like who? Let's be honest. When you're talking about NFL quarterbacks, and there's probably like 3 to 5 starting quarterbacks right now that you'd have the ability to count strings on. Like that ball's coming in. That ball's spinning, dude. There's no way that
I know.
the number of laces on the ball or stitches on the ball has an impact.
Yeah,
No.
he's out there. He makes that cut, and the ball comes in, and it's spiraling. It's cruising to him. He's like, "Oh man, damn, how many laces are on that ball?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
If he's
Didn't
got
catch
an
that
eye
one.
like that, he should be dropping bombs in the show.
They should be snagging them.
Yeah, he should
If
be
you can
playing
figure that out.
baseball.
Right. So I don't know, man. I gotta watch that one. I'm hoping to see a couple like hit his helmet and go flying in the air. It's just gonna be some like where he puts his hands up and he's trying to find it and somebody picks it off.
Vikings offense is probably going to be a lot of the same, right? Like maybe Chris Herndon
Yeah.
fills that Smith role if they wanted that to be a bigger thing.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think maybe Herndon will surprise me just based off of his injury history and how long this guy's been hyped up and has never shown it. Even when he's, he did have a couple games there like years ago, which got him the hype, and he's still living off of that a little bit. But I think people have kind of grown sour on Herndon, including myself. So I'm not expecting anything from him. I think that just means that Thielen might be more consistent than he would have before, because I really did believe there was going to be a huge Irv Smith role, him playing in the slot a lot. That's what they showed in preseason, and he looked like he was very capable of doing it. So I think you probably just feel a little bit better about this if you're an Adam Thielen owner. I do think you expect to just see what we already know from the Vikings. Jefferson is the clear number one. He's going to continue to ball out because he's great. Thielen is probably was undervalued in drafts, or maybe he was valued properly, but I don't think he was overvalued. Still expect him to produce to some extent. He's always a threat for a touchdown. And if you have Dalvin Cook, I would suggest playing him. Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah, for sure. There's a couple other games that might be a little less interesting. Maybe some of it's more for football, but like Cardinals and Titans should be a good barometer for the Cardinals. I think there's going to be some opportunities for their wide receivers in that game for the Cardinals. Probably going to be a lot of Derrick Henry. We might get to see how the Julio Jones and the A.J. Brown thing plays out. That's got to be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun for you, Cameron.
Dude, what do you guys think about Michael Carter? That's what I was thinking. I was looking at it earlier. You got P. Ryan out, you got Cole out, and you got Crowder out on the Jets. So Cole and Crowder, obviously, that's receivers, but you got P. Ryan out, so you got Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, well, Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson. And they're both ahead of him on the depth chart, and I've heard mixed reports about which two of those guys between Ty Johnson and Tevin Coleman are going to be, which one of those two guys is going to be the guy for them. And it sounds like it's going to be both. I don't think Michael Carter is going to play much this first week.
Okay.
Tevin Coleman's probably more involved in the receiving game. We talked about like coach desires too, and Tevin Coleman's on that team because Sally came from the Niners, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and you have that connection, which for whatever it's worth, take it for what it's worth. I mean, it's not like Coleman was ever very productive with the Niners.
Right.
And to me, if you can't produce with the Niners, I don't know how you're going to go somewhere else and all of a sudden succeed. But
right,
talking about
especially
maybe
in
the
New
best
York.
team. Yeah. I'm just not excited about any of it because it's such a mixed thing. I think if you have Michael Carter, it's a hold for a while. You might be potentially waiting a month or more until that develops into something that is of interest. For right now, it's Tevin Coleman and Ty Johnson.
Totally agree. I think Ty Johnson probably runs a little more. Coleman probably gets a few more receiving looks. It's going to be more about Zach Wilson and the passing game for me for the Jets, but also I think Michael Carter is going to be a thing. It's just going to take time. Ty Johnson,
right.
Coleman, I don't think either of those guys are exciting. I think there is an opportunity. It's just going to be more about like showing it.
I would rather have Ty Johnson, even though I think Tevin Coleman's technically the one on the depth chart. I would rather have him over Coleman. I'd rather have Carter out of all of them just because of the unknown with a rookie and just know that I'm signing up for a long-term situation. But like if I was betting on a guy, I won't be surprised if Ty Johnson looks better than Tevin Coleman because I think Coleman sucks.
I watched Ty Johnson. I know it was early in his career, but being a Lions guy, like, wasn't very good. I think Ty Johnson put some stats up, and there were a couple games where he looked okay, but more opportunity. But that's there. I mean, he's going to have the opportunity early, so we'll see what he does with it. We've got it.
Let's get back to that Titans thing real quick, though. Is Julio going to ball out today, Cameron? What's going to happen there?
Oh, yeah, he's in my lineup.
I know he's in your lineup.
Yeah, he's balling out. Are you kidding me? I mean, look
Oh,
at my
man.
keepers. All right, you got Amari and Julio. What did Amari do?
Oh, I see. All right.
Oh,
So hold up. Let me go
okay.
make a player prop bet on Julio real quick then.
Yeah,
Two
you should
two
probably put like two
touchdowns.
plus. Yeah, two
Yeah.
plus touchdowns. Got to be like a plus 600 right now.
Oh, it would be, yeah. Julio 2 touchdowns and a Titans win. That's got to be a huge one.
I'll tell you what. If you're looking to quit your job, bet on Julio.
Bet on Julio Jones.
I think
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think well, I do know why. I think it's gonna happen because they want it to happen, like for a comfort level thing. I see AJ Green scoring a touchdown this week. I think it's gonna be a high upside thing.
Play with me.
No,
Don't play with me.
I'm serious. But I think it's gonna be more that, and maybe he doesn't. Maybe it doesn't go the way they want it to. But I'm thinking AJ Green's gonna have like 2 to 3 red zone looks, maybe a couple fades or corner of the end zone kind of things where they're like, hey, welcome to the team, like settle in kind of thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
coaches tried to do that, and maybe that's not what we're gonna expect for the rest of the year. Maybe he's not gonna be huge, but he used to be a really good receiver, and he's so far off the radar right now that like new team. I just see a world where he catches a touchdown or at least gets a few red zone looks, and that's something that we're monitoring because it happened. I don't know that it.
Yep.
I'm not saying I don't think it's going to be like a season long thing, but like I said, what happens on the field matters. If you see him get a few red zone looks, which they're probably going to force, like we have to honor that.
Ah, it just makes me so mad.
Dude, D Hop is going to be demanding double teams. Like there's
I know, but
opportunity there.
you got D Hop in the red zone, and you're. I mean, I see what you're saying, and I don't disagree. Whatever. But the fact of the matter is, you got D Hop and you got AJ Green. One's in their prime. One should be retired. You're gonna force it to this guy. And D Hop just made a catch last year inside like 4 people. He said, "Give me that." Like,
You're not trusting that like all the time though.
ah,
That was a
no,
Hail
you
Mary.
don't. But
He's
I'm
a
just
lock every time
saying.
for that.
I'm just saying. I know you're not trusting that every time, but I'm just saying you're talking about red zone trying to force it to someone. Like, oh my God, why would you not give it to D Hop?
Only because he's a big name that's new to the team. That's it. I
100%.
No,
think
I
that
hear you.
in like
They'll like give him one of those layups.
yeah, I think in a
Like pseudo
natural
coverage, he's
football
tall.
sense, like Kyler Murray's gonna bootleg out and try to run it in. I think that's what is.
He's gonna play like a tight end. He's gonna split out. He's gonna AJ Green is gonna be that guy. He's gonna get 3 targets a game, 1 catch, 5 yards, touchdown.
I mean,
Yep.
he could be like what do you call it? Like the Jimmy Graham in Chicago role, right? Like, hey, we're not gonna ask you to do too much, but when we need you, like we're gonna be looking for you.
Yeah,
So
like a
he's the
Zach
new
Ertz
Muhammad
situation.
Sanu.
It's a
Yeah.
Zach Ertz. It's a Zach Ertz situation. Go out there and just be a problem for everyone else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
For the fantasy.
Yeah.
100%.
Like we know you ain't outrunning anybody, so when the field gets short, like just stand in front of somebody.
The good news,
Right.
if you're a Hopkins owner or if you took Rondell Moore late, the good news is on one of those touchdown catches, AJ Green comes down with his leg is going to fall off when he lands, and then he'll be straight after that.
I was thinking the same thing. The
Very
good news
possible.
is they use him 4 times and he'll be out for 4 weeks.
Yep. One catch, I'm out for 6 weeks.
Yep, I did my time, made my money.
Do you think AJ Brown gets more of that really short, high upside stuff? Like I know the Titans liked to do that with him, like the little stay routes or the hitch routes. Like he would get some of those or receiver screens on the sideline. Like Julio
Mhm.
makes that more effective, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Maybe. I guess where my mind always went with when I think about the Titans' other guys, I don't unless they decide all of a sudden to change their identity, but I don't expect them to be such a. It's one of the very few teams, and maybe the only team in the league, where the passing volume is always going to be in question. And then when you have AJ Brown and Julio, and assuming Julio has good health, those guys are just going to demand so much themselves, and then there's not really a lot. Like Titans don't throw off like that much. Like there's plenty of games where Tannehill's in the 20s for pass attempts.
yeah.
And AJ Brown or Julio is likely going to be able to make a play on just about all of those if you want him to. So I guess that's where I was at with it because I'm expecting like 30 Henry carries and then not that much passing.
Yeah. I unfortunately am thinking the same thing, but I'm just looking at it and I'm like, you arguably have the best 1-2 receiver in the league, and it is also one of the heaviest running offenses in the league. It's a weird situation that I'm really excited to watch about in week 1.
That
Yeah.
is one of few teams that I totally agree, and I think that like the part that was implied was that like it's one of few teams that doesn't offer many additional opportunities to other players. Like I don't
Yeah,
think that
there's no one else
Anthony
that you should start.
like Ferkser might have the like I'm wide open situation, and that's about
Uh-huh.
it for me. Like I don't think that there's
Yeah.
going to be like a third receiver emerging there. There's not going to be a second running back emerging. Like it's going to be three dudes, and it's going to
Yep.
be maybe Ferkser gets a touchdown here and there when he's open.
Yeah, but I mean, if Tannehill can do anything, I don't like Tannehill that much. But with those three guys, if Tannehill can do anything, dude, Tannehill might be a starting quarterback in fantasy too.
Oh,
He
he
And
is. I think so.
Yeah, he was like quarterback 10 last year, and he was one of the guys, remember, on that list that had like 7 rushing touchdowns last year.
yeah, yeah,
Surprised me. I didn't realize it was like that, but when you're getting rushing touchdowns like that too, and you have the targets he has, like he
yeah,
he should be back end RB1 or
yeah,
QB1.
yeah.
I
No, for
mean, he
real.
did get 7
I
rushing
mean,
touchdowns.
He did have
I
7 rushing
mean,
touchdowns. I mean, it's
right,
not bad.
right. That's more than
Um,
Saquon.
yeah, no, he is. He's on that. Like if you're in a 10-12 team league, he's on the back end of that fringe where you can play him and be fine. Yeah.
For sure. Are the Patriots good this year? They seem to be getting a lot of love.
Um,
I got him losing to the Dolphins week 1.
I'm leaning that way too. Like I did some free like pick these games head up thing, and I took the Dolphins too. But like there seems to be a group out there that feels that the Patriots offseason acquisitions have really turned that team around.
Isn't that every year though?
they do get
Yeah,
They get
love
hyped up
pretty much every
every
year.
single year.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I think
I think
that
it's
I
the
like
Mac
the
Jones.
hype. Yeah, I like the hype this year more than I even did with Cam Newton going there last year. I really do like it, but I still don't expect much. You lost Tom Brady, bro. You're screwed for 30 years. Like that's the ultimate curse.
I I don't know. I don't even know how much we'll learn in this first game either because I'm expecting the Dolphins defense to be pretty good. And
Yeah, that's the
it's
other thing though too.
um we'll see. If Damian Harris ends up having success, if he looks pretty sharp, if Mac Jones is throwing a lot of safe but accurate throws, which I'm kind of expecting to see from him. Jacoby Myers might be a little underrated as a player. That's kind of my problem with the team is outside of him. Like I don't really trust Aguilar. He can go deep still. He can get open deep. He even showed that still last year with the Raiders. So it could work. The problem with him is he's only going to catch about 50% of the balls that touches his hands. And
well, in a tough matchup this week with Byron Jones and Xavier Howard out there too. That's a tall order
it is.
for those guys.
It is. Yeah. I would expect the Patriots to try to be successful running the ball, and I think they might be. That could end up being one of the best offensive lines in the league.
With
So if they're
Smith too and
mm,
Henry out there, two tight end.
I
right,
was
two
gonna
tight end sets, they're both interesting tight ends, and they're both nice safety blankets
I was
for
gonna
Mac
say
Jones.
just wait until you see that their tight ends are gonna lead their receivers.
It's possible. I think Jacoby Myers will probably do okay. It is going to be a tough matchup for him. I don't think he's that good of a receiver, but I do think he's probably a little underappreciated. Um,
Yeah.
the tight ends are interesting. I'm expecting to see a slow, methodical, not that exciting offense from the Patriots, but it doesn't necessarily mean it won't be successful for real football. I just,
Right.
for fantasy, that's tough.
I think
Yep.
their defense still has some pieces on it to keep them in some games. They have to be run first. Two tight end thing. I want to see how the two tight end thing plays out. If that makes Damian Harris more valuable. One thing that you were putting on our radar was Ramondre Stevenson, and I thought I saw that he banged his finger up too. It was like something kind of minor, but could hold him back a little bit.
He had dislocated his finger. I think that's like 2 weeks ago now. Apparently it happened a week prior, and we just didn't even learn about it until then. But there was reports coming that like followed that up with he's fine, and that
Okay.
they were expecting to have him. So I unless we hear something different, I haven't seen anything different. I'm expecting him to be the third running back on the depth chart today. I would be surprised. I would be a little surprised if we do see him very much, but it's definitely something I'm paying attention to. I'll pay attention to it this week. Like I said, not expecting to see it a lot. But if Damian Harris struggles, or even more than that, if he ends up getting banged up because he was hurt he missed like 6 games last year with injuries.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, Ramondre Stevenson is going to be that hot commodity, like that waiver wire ad that everybody's going to want, and rightfully so, I think. Because
I
I
like
think
it.
he might be pretty good.
I like it. It's gonna be one of those where like his skill set and the team identity align,
Right.
and that's a very good thing.
Right. Agreed.
We've got a couple others that have some fantasy implications. I like Packers Saints is in.
hmm
They had the hurricane, so they're playing in Tampa this week. Is it
Jacksonville, I think.
Jacksonville? Okay, so they're playing in Jacksonville. That's going to be a little bit interesting. The Saints are a dome team, which I think affects them more than most teams with what they like to do and how comfortable they are. They've typically been very good at home. So this will be a little weird, but we're going to get our first look at Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback for the Saints.
hmm
Obviously, no Michael Thomas, but we've got some other guys that we're interested in on that team. The Packers are going to be a good test for that team. So I think any positives we can take away from the Saints offense this week will be legit, unless, well, let's be honest, unless the Saints wide receiver 2 is just torching the Packers. The Packers. So
Hey, pay attention to what's his name? Harris. Their returner, Deonta. Is it Deontay Harris?
for the Saints,
His name's escaping me now for the Saints. Yeah, but he's their kick returner, punt returner. Dude's electric in open field, like absolutely electric. And I think he needs to be. I think he has to be by default their wide receiver too. If anything, he's going to be on the field a lot. He's a smaller guy,
Is
and
I
it
was
could be.
saying, is
Mhm.
Traquan Smith out?
Traquan Smith is on IR. He will be out at least 3 weeks.
Okay, I was gonna say because I think he was their second receiver.
Yeah,
yeah,
he's out for minimum 3 weeks now because
Okay.
that new IR now with the way they did it last year with COVID, you can put guys on IR and they can come back in 3 weeks, and that's what he got put on.
Okay.
Um, I don't know that that's going to be anything, I really don't, but I'm throwing it out there because the dude is fantastic in open field, and it's like him and Ty Montgomery. Um, who else do they have? Like that little Jordan
Exactly.
Humphrey. I saw him make a couple plays in preseason. Looks pretty slow. He's he's a little bit bigger. They got like Chris Hogan they picked up in the offseason. So Deontay Harris might end up making some plays this week.
get him in open
But
space a little bit, see if he can treat it like a punt return.
yeah, the dude's awesome. An amazing punt returner. He really is. So we'll see. He's just so fast, dude. So fast and so shifty.
Are we
It
looking
just
for
could be
Tony?
one of those.
Go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead. I was just gonna say it could be one of those situations where, like, we've seen this throughout guys' careers where they're really good punt kick returners and they're receivers, but they never, for whatever reason, they can never make it happen when they're actually receiving for the team, like playing wide receiver.
Sure. That was like I was kind of big on Steve Smith for the Washington football team last year, last couple years. He was banged up, but he was kind of I would describe him similar to that. Like he was a shifty punt returner, and I just saw I think they cut him actually. So like it
Really?
does yeah, it's hard to translate sometimes,
Oh,
but the guys that do, I mean, it's it's fun to watch.
you mentioned Washington real quick. That is a name that we should have mentioned that I forgot about. Diami Brown, Diami or Diami Brown, I forget how you say it, but he was a receiver from North Carolina last year, and a lot of are uh, people that are, I guess you could call them college scouts, but they're just guys that are they're looking at college players, and then they see a situation, they go to like a Matt Harmon, like Matt Harmon's reception perception. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or not. A guy like him that just essentially what he does for a living is evaluates wide receivers in the league, but also does it for college players and tries to predict how good or bad these guys might be. He uses a bunch of different metrics and based on like their success at every single route they run, and then obviously using the eyeball test too on how they look. But him and other guys are Diami Brown was a super deep sleeper for a lot of these guys. And the reason why he was a super deep sleeper and nobody was really in consideration for him is because there was no clear path. They have Terry McLaurin, who was obviously great. They had Curtis Samuel, who they had picked up.
That other Sims kid, that big late bloomer from
Yep.
Ohio State, he had some games last
Yep.
year.
Yep. And I don't even think that Washington has declared yet who is technically going to be the wide receiver 2 today for them between those guys. But I know that Diami Brown had also made some splash plays in preseason. I like the way he looks. I like the plays that I've seen from him. I thought he looked like he could be a sneaky play. Not somebody I would start this week, but it is somebody that like if you were in a deep league and you could just throw him on the end of your bench before the game started, I would do it and just in a burner spot just to see.
Samuel's
Because
out
if he
too.
Yeah, right, that's what I mean. Well,
Yeah,
Samuel's
yeah.
on IR as well.
Yeah,
So like
so
this
that's an
isn't just a 1 week
opportunity.
thing. Right. This isn't just for today. This is like potentially for the next month or more. Who knows, depending on what he does. I know I saw one play in preseason where he was on the field when Fitzpatrick was out there and he was in single. He had coverage on man coverage on the outside, and there was no safety help over the top. And as soon as Fitzpatrick got the ball, he just threw one on a streak, and Diami Brown beat his corner and made a nice contested jump ball. He went and high pointed it. But I've also seen him on plays where he's totally left guys in the dust, where he's cut back out to the outside and then cut across the middle of the field on a slant, and the guy's got wheels. He can run. So it's just something that I would just, like I said, if you were in a deep league and you could throw somebody in your bench, he would be worth doing it. And then if it's nothing, then you cut him the next week. But I also try to like trying to get ahead on potential guys like that, so you're not then competing on waiver wire or in Fab for that guy.
Yeah, another matchup bonus too. They're playing the Chargers, and I think their defensive backfield is very respectable. They get why can't I think of his name now? Oh my God, their safety, dude. I've known his name every time it's crossed my mind. Derwin
Derwin?
James. They get Derwin
Mhm.
James back. They have some very good corners there. So like
Mhm.
anything that the Washington receivers do this week is legit.
Yeah, and that's why it pays to be able to watch the games too instead of just reading stat lines, because if you see Fitzpatrick taking shots to Brown and you just see like really good defensive play, good nice contested stuff, and it was just, like if he goes 2 for 30 and you just read a stat line, you're gonna be like, oh, that ain't shit. But that's the stuff you need to actually watch or read up on or pay attention to, because that doesn't necessarily mean everything. Like you said, when you got a Charger defense that actually have some playmakers over there.
For sure, yeah. If you end up with that stat line, but it comes with like 6 targets in key situations, or that they're
Right.
design plays for him, like that means so much more.
Right.
Do we see Tony Jones this week? Are we looking for that?
I think so. I think he's going to play some, right? He has to. I mean, he's now the running back 2 on that team. And they've always played 2 running backs to some extent. Like Alvin Kamara has never in his entire career been a 1,000-yard rusher in his entire career, because obviously he's used a lot in the pass game and he's amazing at both. But he's shown that if he gets too much work for too long a stretch of a time, that he does get hurt. He does get banged up. And Sean Payton has even made comments about that in the past. So like I totally expect to see Tony Jones Jr. out there, and then we'll just see. We'll see what this dude is. I know my buddy Jake, big Notre Dame fan. I was asking him about Tony Jones, and he was like, "No." He's like, he was the worst. but I tell you, I mean, I think he's been there for a year already. I think this is his second year with the Saints, and I don't know, man. In preseason, I thought he looked all right, but I don't know the competition he was going against either. Might have been some fucking third stringers that aren't on the team anymore. So that's hard to gauge. But
They
he
definitely
obviously
want
showed
to run
enough.
2 backs. Like that's what the Saints
Right.
want to do.
Yeah. And I mean, Latavius Murray's been there and been that guy for them for a few years now. And obviously Tony Jones beat him out of a job. They asked Murray to take a cut, and then they just cut him when he didn't want to.
Yeah.
Because they're willing to commit to this other dude. So Yeah,
Yeah,
that's another one to look at because he if he's out there on the field enough, he'll probably be relevant too.
for sure. And then we've touched on all of these games at this point, I think, which is cool. Our Monday night game, we've got the Ravens and the Raiders. I think that the Raiders have added and some good pieces on defense, and I think that the Raiders' defense could be a little better than we've come to expect. I think that they had some young guys last year that could have gotten a little bit better. They drafted like Damon Arnett pretty early as a corner last year. He was like, I don't know, it was like somewhere between like 12 and 18 in the draft, and when they drafted him, they said they thought he was the best Ohio State corner. That was the year that the Lions took Okuda. So they were saying they felt really
Oh,
good about him. I did think he played well at times, but those rookie corners as a whole last year kind of got roasted. Like Henderson with the Jags, like I think it just takes time, or you're out on an island. But anyway, they
right.
added a couple other pieces, some good, nice pieces to kind of fill some holes they had. So I guess what I'm getting at long term is like I don't know that the Raiders defense is good enough to lock anybody down, but we don't know exactly what Lamar Jackson we're going to get from the Ravens, and I'm taking it with a grain of salt against this defense just because it's so early that maybe the Raiders did put a defense together. But I will be a little concerned, I guess, if the Ravens aren't scoring points too. It's kind of like one of those
Sure.
double-edged swords. It's like I expect the Ravens to perform well, but also I'm waiting and seeing if the Raiders defense is legit or not. So it's going to be a few weeks before I know what this game necessarily means. But for fantasy purposes, I think there's some interesting names. I mean, I want to know if the Ravens are going to use any of these receivers that they've brought in. Like they got Devin Duvernay, I know they drafted Rashad Bateman and he's not ready to play yet, but like they've got some other guys that they took relatively early that have had some time to develop in the league. Like is it going to be Mark Andrews again? Are they going to try to, you know, is Marquise Brown going to be more like his rookie year than his sophomore year because he took a step back?
I know. Yeah, he's one of those. I'm not betting on this, but he could be one of those guys that we look at pretty soon and we're like, man, we were just too low on him, like just completely ignoring him when we shouldn't have. But you're betting on Lamar Jackson to be consistent throwing the ball, and I just feel like that's a bet you never want to make.
Same with
Um,
Carr for me. Like I don't know, I don't want to trust Carr throwing too much either. It's kind of a weird, like with
yeah,
Ruggs. It's almost
yeah,
weird because it's for me like Ruggs and Marquise Brown are kind of in the same situation.
they are. That their receiver situation too with Ruggs, and then now you have that Brian Edwards who is now another year of a bunch of camp hype for him. He is starting. He's going to be on the field, so we'll see how that plays out. Um, it's Mark Andrews for the Ravens. You're playing Mark Andrews obviously, and you should feel good about him. You're obviously going to play Lamar because he can take one to the house running it, and then that's your fantasy day. And I do think you're playing Tyson Williams, which we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
And then you're just really watching that running back that backfield and seeing who is because I mean it could be is have they said anything about Devonta Freeman? Maybe he's going to be out there. I don't know. Uh, but it might be Latavius Murray, and then we'll just see how the rest of that shakes out. Um, but those other receivers for Baltimore, man, like Sammy Watkins, he's going to be out there, but I just can't. I'm not at all excited about him. I mean, I don't think, and nobody was. He was either drafted super late or just undrafted.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
have a
you've
lot of
got
high
him,
expectations for the passing game.
Duvernay, Miles Boykins. I mean, it sounds like Rashad Bateman's going to be back at some point, and it's like they keep trying to fix an issue that I don't think is talent related, and I don't know, I don't really understand it, but I am also
Mhm.
thinking like, how many darts can you throw at the board before you hit one? Like something
Right.
has to happen.
We'll
Um,
just keep drafting these wide receivers and keep talking about how they're the next best thing, and then they don't do shit. You know.
exactly. We've also got, and this is the Ravens probably have the Ravens' run defense is legit. It's like they made it a point to go add guys like Calais Campbell. That was after Derrick Henry ran the ball down their throat a couple years ago, and they're still built like that, like they want to stop a Derrick Henry. So like the Josh Jacobs Kenyon Drake thing is something that needs to be monitored. Kenyon Drake bumped Josh Jacobs down draft boards pretty far, like into a third round territory for some drafts. So I think Josh Jacobs is still good. I'm not panicking if either of those guys look good against the Ravens defense, but I would prefer obviously to see, 60, 70 yards. I'm looking for volume. I'd like to see a touchdown or two, but take it with a grain of salt. If Josh Jacobs doesn't look good this year, but he's getting or this week, sorry, but
This
he's
game,
getting some volume, like I'm not hitting the panic button. I think the Ravens defense is really good, especially against the run.
Josh Jacobs is one of those perfect examples of a guy that you have something that happens in camp that knocks him down on people's draft boards for reasons that you and I both disagree with, but hey, that's fine. That's where we are allowed to then get value, what we perceive to be value in drafts on players like Josh Jacobs. This with this matchup too, like this is just one of those. This is set up for one of those perfect situations where he does go out there and puts up a disappointing day. Potentially, he could go out there, get 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, he's a really good player. But if he does go out there and get like that 14 for 56 and doesn't score and then doesn't catch anything, and Kenyon Drake's out there and he catches a few dump offs here and there, like you stack that on top of him already going lower in drafts because people were a little worried about the situation. You put those two things together, and now you have a buy low opportunity that I would love to go make happen. Especially if you're a team that needs running back, because he could have a good game, but I'm sure that we aren't expecting with how stout the Ravens front seven is. Like if you're betting on one way or the other, you would probably lean towards him struggling this game. It's not like the Raiders passing offense is so explosive that it's going to be able to take some pressure off them. It's kind of part of the problem. And they have some questionable they have a questionable situation with their offensive line as well. They lost some guys, and I think one of their starters is also hurt now for this game. So just a lot of bad. So if he goes out and gets 100 and a touchdown this week, then holy shit, good on you, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, that's stud status.
Right, which I think he is very good. You have him, so I'm not going to be able to buy low on him. But if someone had him in someone's league and they were panicking after week 1 on him, I could definitely see that happening. Then I would be trying to trade for him.
Oh yeah, great opportunity. They're not always guaranteed, but yeah, when you're looking at a situation where it's like, I don't expect Josh Jacobs to have a huge game this week, but if it's bad enough, people are panicking. Yeah, and you don't move your needle too much, and there's a chance you could actually get him for relatively cheap.
Yeah, you go trade him for another low end RB2 and some wide receiver 2 or some wide receiver 3, because there's you can replace that position, and you go get yourself a good running back. That's what I'd be doing.
Exactly, and those are the decisions that really give you. They can put you over the top if you hit at the right time. Yeah. Sometimes it's a little bit of luck. Sometimes what you're seeing is real, but yeah, definitely read the room, read the game, read the matchup, and yeah, use that to your advantage. I like that one a lot, actually, because people are already down on him if they don't know anything about Josh Jacobs. They just took him because he was sitting there.
Yeah. For some reason, people are still sold on Kenyon Drake. I don't know why.
Me either. Well, we touched on every game. We touched on every injury update. So that's about it. The bullet points are OBJ is a game time decision. That's a little worrisome. Ekeler is active, but seems like he's going to be limited, or the way that kind of developed is a little bit weird for me. Washington's got a good defense too, so you probably drafted him too high to bench him, but definitely take that with a grain of salt. Maybe go for some more upside on your lineup, or if you happen to be very deep at running back, maybe you do sit him this week. I don't know. Don't blame me if he blows up though. Tyson Williams is probably the guy for the Ravens backfield this week. Barkley's questionable. Go add Devontae Booker if you have Barkley. Go do it right now if you haven't. He might still be available. Go try to make a late trade maybe. You could probably still get him for pretty cheap because he's a backup. But try to make that happen. Yeah, and then we touched on a bunch of guys that we're keeping an eye on this week. I think we've given our viewers a few things to look for, given them some things that could make a difference on their fantasy team. And I don't know, man, we got a whole day of football ahead of us. We get to watch football all day, see who's going to do what these teams might look like. Anything you guys want to add?
I think for me anyway, I think we've covered everything I wanted to touch on today. And I am just so jacked, dude. We're 20 minutes away. I'm
20 minutes away from football.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes, sir. Hopefully my bets come through today. Not gonna happen, but a man
Let's
can dream.
go.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
anybody, I did see some people popping in and out, so I appreciate that. If you guys are watching, our recording on our channel, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for us if you like what we had to offer. Turn your notifications on so you know when we go live. We're going to be going live Sunday mornings. We're going to be going live Tuesday or Thursday nights. I think we're going to be flexible on that based on the updates we have. Tuesdays, if we're on Tuesdays, we'll be giving updates on waiver wire targets. Thursdays would be more like a watch party. We might be doing both. I don't know. Kind of depends on the feedback we get or how you guys are feeling about it. So definitely leave some feedback. Hit us up with some comments. But yeah, I had a blast doing this. I hope we get some people in the chat that we can kind of bounce some lineup ideas off of soon.
Yeah, we'll start working on that for sure. I think start sharing this out to some people I know.
All right, yeah, I'll do the same thing. We'll get it going. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. Definitely, like I said, hit that like and subscribe button, hit that follow button so you can get some updates on your phone when we go live. And